I call the honourable member Grant Robertson.
E te pika tēnā koe. Ki ngā meme o tēnei whare, tēnā koutou katoa. Tēnei e mihi ana ki ngā tangata whenua o te whanganui a Tara, koutou no Taranaki whānui, no te Atiawa. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Mr. Speaker, I want to first acknowledge and congratulate you on your election to the position of Speaker, and I want to pay my respects to the mana whenua of this place. I feel an enormous sense of privilege, gratitude and history to stand here today in the House. Mr. Speaker, in 1954 and 1957, my grandfather, Bob Wilkie, ran as the Labour candidate in the Wairarapa electorate, a somewhat thankless task at the time. His advertisement in that long lamented journal, the Featherston Chronicle, just before the 1957 election reads in part, and I quote, "I believe it is the responsibility of all in prosperity to care for those in adversity, that the welfare of the nation in the future depends on the children of today, and every assistance, financial and otherwise, should be given to those who have undertaken the responsibilities of parenthood. While times may have changed, the core values of social justice, community and family that lie at the heart of my grandfather's words and the Labour Party's existence remain as important as ever today. I hope that Bob, who is in the gallery today, is proud that his grandson has made it to this place, and happy 89th birthday for tomorrow. These values of social justice which drew me to the Labour Party, a party of principle and vision, are what drives me today. I believe that the fifth Labour government took giant strides in the journey towards social justice. History will judge programs like KiwiSaver, Working for Families or 20 hours free early childhood education as landmarks in our economic and social progress. I felt privileged to work with and for Helen Clark and Michael Cullen, true campaigners for social justice, and people who have dedicated their adult lives to the betterment of New Zealanders. Mr. Speaker, I stand here today as, I hope not unluckily, the 13th representative of the Wellington Central electorate since it was named as such in 1905. I'm humbled by those who have gone before me. My predecessors have included people of remarkable talent and vision, such as Peter Fraser, whose legacy in the area of education I'll return to, Frank Kitts and Dan Ridderford, men who played significant roles in shaping this great city outside of this House as well, and Fran Wild, who showed enormous courage and fortitude in sponsoring the Homosexual Law Reform Act through this House. Fran, of course, left Parliament to play a key role in the development of this absolutely, positively wonderful city, and she continues to serve the region today. My immediate predecessor, the Honourable Marion Hobbs, was a tireless advocate for Wellington and for Labour values. She is principled, passionate and honest. I could not have had a better teacher when it comes to representing the diverse communities of my electorate. I can't promise, as Marion did, to call everybody darling, dearest or thingy, but I do give my commitment that I am first and foremost the MP for Wellington Central, and that I will stand up for all Wellingtonians and for this city and its beautiful environment. I want to acknowledge in the House the two other cast members from the campaign we called Survivor Wellington Central. The Honourable Heather Roy and Sue Kedgley are both articulate and principled advocates for the causes they believe in, and were warm and friendly in what was from time to time a difficult campaign. I venture to suggest not many other campaigns dealt with water pistols and exploding taser guns, but that's Wellington Central for you. I look forward to working with all MPs from the Wellington region to advance the well-being of our constituents. I also want to acknowledge those who've broken ground in Parliament. In particular, I want to salute my colleagues Marion Street and Chris Carter. In his maiden speech 15 years ago, Chris Carter said that he hoped his presence would make it easier for other gays and lesbians to aspire to political office. For my part, I can say that it has. I am proud and comfortable with who I am. Being gay is part of who I am. Just as being a former diplomat, a fan of the mighty Ranfurly Shield-holding Wellington Lions, being a fan of New Zealand music and New Zealand literature. My political view is defined by my sexuality only in as much as it has given me an insight into how people can be marginalised and discriminated against, and how much I abhor that. I'm lucky that I've grown up in a generation that is not fixated on issues of sexual orientation. I'm not, and neither should others be. I am here today on the strength of support from my friends and family. In particular, I want to acknowledge the support and love of my partner, Alf. We are living proof that it pays not to stereotype. We met playing rugby. I was the number 8 and he was the halfback. Mr. Speaker, a great combination. I have also had the pleasure of sharing in the growing up of Alf's children over the last 10 years and being part of his wider whānau. Taku aroha I a koe. I also take this opportunity to acknowledge other new and returning members across the House for all the differences that we may have over the direction of this country and the policies that we need to get there. I know that you are here to do your best, that you've worked hard to be here, and I salute you for that. My ability to make it through in campaign and win in Wellington Central was down to the hard work and sacrifice of hundreds of people. Some of them are here today. I thank you all again. My campaign team in many ways mirrors the Wellington Central electorate. Argumentative, informed, creative, energetic and young. And yes, we also had a few public servants in the campaign. Public servants have a right to participate in the political process, and I look forward to the new government upholding its campaign promises to support and respect public servants. Can I suggest a good place to start might be to stop referring to hard-working public servants as useless bureaucrats? I've been a public servant in this town, and I know that almost without exception, public servants give their total commitment to the government of the day, whoever that may be. Wellington is, of course, more than, as Don McGlashan puts it, the suits and the briefcases along Lambton Quay. It is our most sustainable city. More people walk to work or take public transport than anywhere else in New Zealand. We need to do more to encourage that through better integrated, more reliable public transport services. Wellington Central is also home to the wonderful Karori Sanctuary, which I encourage all members to visit, and fantastic other outdoor education facilities. A significant part of this is the town belt, a tremendous legacy to the city that surrounds the inner suburbs in green space. There are some questions around the legal status of the town belt, and from time to time land has been taken from it for other purposes. In consultation with the Wellington City Council and interested parties, I plan to sponsor legislation in this House to ensure that the town belt remains in, and as appropriate is returned to, public ownership. Along with the outdoor activities, Wellington's vibrancy is built around its creative sector. It's not hard to be swept along by the rich creative energy of this city. As the poet Loris Edmond has put it, this is the city of action, the world headquarters of the verb. I believe one of the great legacies of the fifth Labour government is the growing sense of pride and identity expressed through our arts and culture. This is more obvious in Wellington than perhaps anywhere else. Our creative industries are not only the centre of our social life and tourism, but they're also part of the growing businesses of the city. The future of the Wellington economy, as with the rest of New Zealand, relies on those who can establish sustainable businesses that leverage off our natural advantages and capitalise on innovation. In Wellington, the self-styled Silicon Valley, a group of businesses led by young entrepreneurs, is leading the way in the development of software and information technology solutions that have been picked up around the globe. Mr. Speaker, there are, of course, many people in Wellington Central whose lives are a world away from selling software on the world stage. For many of them, substandard housing is a problem. Too many homes in the city are poorly insulated and overcrowded. This makes them unhealthy and energy inefficient. I believe we must, as a country, make a key priority the quality of our housing stock and the provision of adequate social housing. Wellington is also a place where many migrants and refugees begin their lives. We are a nation of migrants that benefits so much from each new wave of migration. Yet I do not believe we do enough to support and welcome our newest New Zealanders. The bursting pride I saw from graduates at the M-Class English language course last week here in Wellington needs to be matched by a strong commitment to support and work with them as they find their feet. Mr. Speaker, I arrived in Wellington 14 years ago looking to find my feet. I'd grown up largely in Dunedin in the cloak of a Presbyterian family where my parents, who are here today, raised me and my two brothers to believe that we are all created equal, to treat others as we wish to be treated, and to work hard for our goals. They gave us love and support and allowed us to dream but be practical, and I thank them for that. I was interested in politics from an early age. Not, however, as early as my colleague Darren Hughes, whose first words as a baby, I understand, were Mr. Speaker. My political consciousness grew around some key events. I swelled with pride and too many sausage rolls from the school canteen, and as I saw David Lange on television at the Oxford Union debate. Not only could an overweight guy with glasses succeed, but New Zealand could stand up to world powers, hell-bent on destroying each other and us in the process. I was proud then of our independent stance on the world stage, and I was proud to play my part in later years working at MFAT and representing New Zealand at the UN in New York. Through the late 1980s and into the 1990s, I became distressed at the direction I saw government take. The unfettered, market-knows-best, laissez-faire, user-pays philosophy did untold damage to my community. At the supermarket where I worked to pay my way through school and university, the Employment Contracts Act arrived in 1991. I experienced firsthand our penal rates disappear, our conditions lost, and the value of our wages sink. I have never forgotten the impact of that law on working New Zealanders, and I have worked ever since to support the rights of workers. At university, I became involved in the fight against user pays in education. I ended up as the student president at Otago and in turn here in Wellington for NZUSA. I learned a great deal as a student politician. I learned to organise, I learned to campaign, and I learned what it meant to stand up for what you believe in. After one particularly rowdy but peaceful protest, I was accused by a policeman of being the biggest quasi-terrorist in Dunedin. I told him I was trying to lose weight. But above all, I learned that it is education that will make the difference to people achieving their potential in life. Peter Fraser and Clarence Beebe laid out the vision for the state's role in education in 1939. I quote, "The government's objective broadly expressed is that every person, whatever his level of academic ability, whether he be rich or poor, whether he live in town or country, has a right, as a citizen, to a free education of the kind for which he is best fitted and to the fullest extent of his powers." Close quote. While much of this has changed in intervening years, Fraser and Beebe's vision is the one that I come to Parliament determined to develop and make real for the 21st century. Mr. Speaker, we have a great education system in New Zealand, staffed by dedicated professionals. We must build on that to ensure that it provides the basis for a strong, inclusive society going forward. There is not enough time today to talk about all the areas where we can work on this, but I want to make mention of one in particular. The current arrangements for the funding of special needs education need an urgent and serious review. While successive governments have put more money into this area, I know of parents that are still going through extreme stress to get the resources they are entitled to, and in some cases those resources are not sufficient. The Education Act says that every child in New Zealand has a right to an education. We have a responsibility to make that real. Mr. Speaker, my vision for making real the ideals of social justice that I spoke of earlier is a vision for a modern, inclusive New Zealand, where we equip our people with the skills and knowledge to succeed in an ever-globalising world. A New Zealand where we celebrate and promote diversity, and where we truly are our brother and sisters' keepers. The solutions and ways to achieve this will not all be found in Wellington or in government. My generation of politicians must be open to a range of potential solutions. They'll be found in our communities and our families, on marae and in workplaces. It is the job of government and politicians in general to bring those together and provide leadership and support. I want to help build a modern, inclusive New Zealand where we do not accept children growing up in poverty. I believe that we should set goals to eliminate poverty in New Zealand and work out a program of redistribution that will see incomes and spirits lift together. A modern, inclusive New Zealand also needs to be one that looks after our environment. The health of our natural environment is critical not only to our way of life, but also to our economy. If we want people to stay in New Zealand, we need clean water to swim in and clean air to breathe. If we want carbon-conscious consumers across the world to buy our goods, or tourists spoiled for choice to choose to come here, then we need to be able to show that our 100% pure, clean, green image is a reality and sadly, in many cases, it is not. A modern inclusive New Zealand will be one where we do not build more jails, but where we work with and across communities to ensure that people do not end up in prison in the first place. A modern inclusive New Zealand needs to ensure that we acknowledge the place and role of Māori in New Zealand as tangata whenua and the Treaty of Waitangi. I would like to promote one small step in that regard. I believe that te reo Māori should be taught in all schools for all pupils up until at least age 14. Learning a language is one of the keys to understanding a culture, and in this case, it's our own culture. This is one small step that we could take to build a more harmonious society. A modern inclusive New Zealand will harness the best of being a Pacific nation. The emerging Pacifica communities in New Zealand need to be supported and developed, and those communities will also play an important role in New Zealand's place as a peacemaker and conflict resolver in our region. In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, quite simply the reason I entered the political arena is because of my belief in social justice. My desire is to play a part in making my community, city, country and world a fairer and more equal place, because it is that equality that will drive aspiration, opportunity and success for all. In my time in this Parliament, it is my commitment that I will work to build an ever better, fairer New Zealand, where we seek to ensure that achieving your potential is not just the preserve of the privileged, but possible for all. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, kia kaha, tēnā koutou katoa.